passion is human potential. We're a multi-country digital bank. You can walk up to the kiosk, you can open a bank account in 3 minutes. We then employed previously unemployed people from the communities where we deployed those kiosks. And the best person to make the decision is the person who has the most context about the factors that should go into that decision.
Hi everyone, welcome to a Startup and Scale-up People podcast, a place where you can learn about how people build their dreams, businesses and lives. I'm Mario Rivas and I'm here today with Coen Jonker. I'm very excited to have Coen here because he's a successful entrepreneur. He has a startup, he was in corporate before, he was in Deloitte and the bank, has a very good mix of background. He was in the public sector, private sector, also like banks, and now he has a scale-up. It's a unicorn, around, I don't know if I'm right or not, you can correct me later, around 1.5 billion valuation, more than 20 million customers, international operation. And I met him in the Fintech event in London. He was open to have this conversation with me today. So very excited. Thank you, Coen. Welcome.
Mario, lovely to see you again.
It's a pleasure, to be honest, Coen, to talk with you. I read about you quite a lot, and I read that actually you were very, down to earth, very approachable, obviously very sharp, efficient. That's why you have this business and in the state that it is. But I like honestly your style. I've been talking with many people. I've been leading big teams as well, 8,000 people, 3,000 people. When I was in operations, I've been, connecting and working with different type of people. And I can see, that your type of leadership is very human and people oriented as well. So I like that. So to start a little bit, Coen, the conversation, because some people can say, okay, but what he does, right? And what is your company doing in the fintech sector, right? Because you do many things. It's not just, an app. It's more than that. Can you explain a little bit what your business does, just to provide some context?
Mario, yes. We're a multi-country digital bank. So we're headquartered in Singapore. We have fully regulated banks in South Africa and in the Philippines. We also run fintech-style businesses in Indonesia and Hong Kong, currently expanding into Singapore as well as Malaysia. So that says what we do. As you quite rightly say, our last round, Series D, Nubank invested as our lead investor. We were valued at $1.5 billion, 22 million customers now. I think the more interesting question is why we do it. And our passion is human potential. The thing that gets us out of bed is using financial services, deploying financial services to help people unleash their full potential, their full economic potential, create agency in their lives, meaning that we want people to not experience their finances and their participation in the economy as a major source of stress, but rather as a major source of personal empowerment. And that kind of mindset around empowerment, around agency and around helping people unleash their potential is actually at the heart of why we come to work every day.
And that's why this is linked to, I don't know, I'm asking because I'm learning through this conversation, so that some of the questions can sound a little bit dumb. But that's why you started with emerging markets. That's the reason, because you wanted to help people, because in emerging markets it's more difficult, to get access to banks or technologies, and also the regulation is not so mature. That's why you started there.
So Mario, in a way, I would say that's sort of where life started us. So I'm from South Africa. I was lucky enough to start doing business in Southeast Asia. And the inspiration actually comes from emerging markets, and particularly from people operating in the informal economy and at the margins of the economy in emerging markets. And, if people like me and you, and I suspect many of the people who would be listening to your podcast, either has some experience or come from an emerging market. And we know that in the world, like the world's not an equal place. We don't start running the race from the same place. You know, even people who are reasonably well educated and reasonably wealthy in emerging markets, in some ways are financially excluded or have financially more challenges than people who start their lives in developed markets. And so a big part of what excites us is the opportunity of transformation in finance to actually create a more equal world, to create a world where more people are empowered to exercise agency. And we think, you know, the world's going to go in one of two ways. Either the world is going to become a place where fewer and fewer people have more power, or a place where more people have more power. And we think that the second option is better for the world. And we think that banking and financial services is a major driver of those patterns of, call it empowerment and disempowerment, into the next generation.
Coen, your business, because you are in two sides of the table, I would say, because you have your business a bank and also it's a fintech, so it's a mix, right?
That's right.
I'm correct?
That's right. I would say you're right. I think from a regulatory perspective, we're a bank. From a operational and technology perspective, we are very much more a fintech.
But I heard as well when I was reading that you have Kiosk, you have like, you know, specific locations. I would say that because we recognize, as a like normal customer that they don't know so much about this, we recognize a bank because they have a branch, right? And then the fintech is it's everything online. So that's how we think, right? In a very, you know, it's like normal customer that don't know so much about the market. I read that as well. So I thought, actually, maybe that's a bank. So that's how actually I related it. How does it work?
So, Mario, if we think about the categories in our own head, you're quite right. We think of a bank as something with a branch, something very stable, something very long-term. We often think about a fintech as something that happens on year. What we try to do is to put those categories aside and ask ourselves the question, what would actually work for our customers? Because our customers don't actually care that much about the category. They care about what is a proposition that will help them in their lives. And when we started the business, I took the whole team out to a small rural village in South Africa, and we spent a week there. And we asked ourselves, if we had to build something from first principles, what would we build? And what we built, and this essentially became, I think, the unique idea at the heart of our business. I would say this is our party trick as a business, is we actually have a hybrid model where we run as a fintech, but in addition to what you'd expect from a fintech, which is an app on a phone and other digital channels, we created this unique crossover channel that is a digital kiosk that we can deploy very cheaply inside any retail store or even a post office or a pharmacy or a mall or entry like space inside a big building.
Is it sort
anywhere
of ATM?
Where there's people.
It's a sort of like
Yeah, so that's a good question. So the kiosk, it's like a self-service sales and service machine where you can walk up to the kiosk, you can open a bank account in 3 minutes. It prints you a Visa debit card with your name on it that you walk away with a live account. So it does all the biometrics and all the processes of opening an account in about 3 minutes without any paperwork.
Are you serious?
We've done that in multiple countries. And what that has enabled us to do is basically replicate the sales and service function of a branch through this kiosk. And what we then did, we realized that if you just put the kiosk in a shop, then people will find it a bit intimidating. What's that thing over there? How does it work? So we then employed previously unemployed people from the communities where we deployed these kiosks. We called them brand ambassadors, and they actually not banking people. They don't do anything. They just educate you and they explain to you how the product works. So they basically consumer or customer education officers. And this combination of the kiosk plus this brand ambassador is what actually created the fast growth in our business. And then what we do is this kiosk actually doesn't do cash. So it's not an ATM. we then integrated into the checkout counters and till points of our retail partners. So wherever we put these kiosks, we partner with grocery stores and pharmacies and so on. We integrate into their till points, and the till point becomes the place where people deposit and withdraw their cash. So you create basically human channels in local communities where people can, within walking distance of their house, they can open a bank account, they can replace their card, they can deposit money, they can withdraw money, and that actually replaces the sales and service function of the branch through the kiosk, and it replaces the teller function of the branch through the cash register in the retail store. And that has been our hero channel. That's actually how we've grown most of the 22 customers we have today, is through that channel.
That's impressive. That was a very good idea. I mean, I imagine that you thought a lot about the risk as well, how to mitigate the risk, because what we think, who's gonna clonate this? Someone is gonna do like a fake account, But removing that side of the model, you eliminated a very big barrier, in terms of like making this process available for everyone, accessible, and very quick as well, and like this human connection that you mentioned, how to make it accessible to everyone. So it's like, we're super aligned with your philosophy. Wow.
Yeah, it's an interesting thing, Mario, that if you think about the problem with banking and why so many people, there are still more than 1 billion people in the world who don't have a bank account, or any kind of financial inclusion. So if you think about that, the dilemma is that branches are expensive. So you can't take a branch to every town, to every village, to every community. At the same time, many people live in the cash world. So to just give somebody an app doesn't work, because how do they actually get the cash into their account? How do they get the cash out? Who tells them, who educates them on how to do it? So you had to build this kind of new channel that has a very low cost point, that drives down your cost of acquisition so that it can be accessible to your customer, but at the same time create a human engagement interface. Because what we learn about people's money, in many emerging markets, money is the thing people are most stressed about. It's their highest stressor across emerging markets in their life. People don't always have the confidence to just download an app and change the way they do finance. And so creating these human channels was the way to help people essentially cross the chasm from the physical cash world into the digital world.
Yeah, it's also sometimes happens with, I think for me, I heard about a new tool, a new app or something, right? And you say, oh, this is very cool. And then you say, oh, but I have to install it. I have to do all the process, then move everything there. I'm going to stay here, And this is it's like I don't know how, you're quite resistant to do it, right? And I think you always need to hear some voices like your friends, no, this is very cool, no, this is very quick, no, do it. Like, okay, I will do it. And then you do it. So that you're covering that part basically of the psychology and educational aspect, to
100%. 100%. The way you described it there is very relatable. Long ago, I saw a video on education that talked about the granny factor. And the idea was that if everyone just had somebody who encouraged them, somebody who just say, listen, you can do it, I'm behind you, let me be here to support you. And a lot of what we do through our brand ambassadors is just that, having a friendly person who will just encourage you to be a bit more courageous, go to that extra step before you give up and get through the process. And it's amazing. It's like magic what we do for each other as humans.
Wow. Yeah, so now I understand. But one final question related to that. So why is it so difficult to build a bank compared with building a fintech startup?
Very good question. I think that there are two things that make building a bank a lot more challenging. When I speak to fintechs, almost every fintech I speak to, particularly if it's a B2C fintech, tells me that they're going to end up being a digital bank. And I sometimes say to them, just look at me, look at the color of my beard. Do you really think you want to do that? And I would say there are two things that are quite major challenges. The one is that when you're a digital bank, you've got two forces pulling in different directions. On the one hand, as a fintech, you have to be super responsive, innovative, smart, fast moving. But on the other side, you've got this heavy burden of regulatory requirements. And so you have to employ people who come from an industry that is super conservative. So you almost from day one, you build into your business these two forces. And when I speak to my friends who started digital banks, I speak to, David at New or Vlad at Revolut and these guys, we all, in hindsight, say, we either had too many bankers or too few bankers. We either went too much in this direction or too much in that direction. So I think this regulation versus innovation piece is one piece that makes it difficult. The second piece that makes it difficult is that banking is very capital intensive. So you can't bootstrap a digital bank. There are some new banks that you can bootstrap if you do like not a fully regulated bank and you sort of do something that looks like a bank on the side. That has other challenges, but it's impossible to bootstrap a digital bank just because you need capital that quite quickly builds into the hundreds of millions of dollars. And I often look at guys who start businesses from nothing and they make a lot of money, and I'm like, that's amazing that you've just been smarter than me because you've picked an industry where you don't have to be out with a begging bowl asking for capital all the time to build your business.
Yeah, because you need this in the background, right? To because you also do lending, right? You lend money as well.
Correct.
Correct. So you have to have capital.
Yeah.
And regulation is very complicated. That was also with have you heard about Griffins?
Yes.
I was with David Jarvis talking, and the story is crazy. He bootstrapped for 5 years until he got the license in the UK. And he's a SaaS for banks, basically. That's how he described it.
Yes.
And he was telling me the journey. It was a very painful journey because he was in the US. He moved to the UK and then waited like many years. So he's basically helping people who want to have banks through their platform. That's what I understand in general terms. Have you thought to explore that part of the business, or is it too complicated because there's a lot of infrastructure as well?
We've been tempted on a number of occasions to say, like, we've built all this stuff for ourselves. Why don't we package it and start like a B2B business line? Even our kiosks, we've had a lot of people coming to us and saying, can we just buy your kiosks from you? And I think what we've concluded is that in life, it's difficult enough to become good at one thing. To try and become good at many things at the same time is not only hard, but it's very distracting for management. And so our view has been to be very, very focused. And so we build our technology only for ourselves. We don't try to do B2B. We very much a business to consumer and to small business. That's worked well for us. It's just kept us very focused. I think, obviously I would never say never, but as a general rule, whenever I sort of speak to other founders as well, my advice to people is rather do fewer things well than more things in a sort of mediocre way. I think that the world is becoming one of hyper-specialization. And once you know what it is that you particularly do well, what is the gift that you bring uniquely to the world, just double down on that.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. I asked this question because I'm not 100% sure if you can create a new line of business or not, or it's a totally different business, right? So that's why I asked this question. But you're absolutely right. Before we started the recording, I was telling you about me a little bit. So you see that I'm doing many things, but I can't keep focus on one. Now that's what I'm trying to do. I think remove noise and then try to keep focus on one thing and do that very, very, very well. You're absolutely right. So otherwise you cannot progress. It's like
for me personally, that's a big challenge. I'm always we're all kind of neophytes, we love new shiny things, and I'm terrible that way. My team say they always fearful when I go on holiday, because they know when I come back on holiday, I will have read some new books and listened to some podcasts, and I'll have like 10 new ideas, and I'll just be driving them crazy and defocusing the business. So I think it's a challenge for all of us, because if you, like me and you, are both adventurers, right? We're not happy to just sit and have a day job. We want to do something interesting. We want to see the world. We want to have an adventure. The challenge of life is that, to be successful is you have to balance that sense of adventure with kind of a discipline that says, I'm going to do something difficult. I'm going to do it for a long time until I get really good at it. It's still a challenge for me today, is how to balance those two things.
Yeah. Wow. I would think about this during this long weekend. Because I feel it too. Coen, a lot of people, I live in London. I am the startup scale-up, ecosystem. I know a lot of people. I have a lot of friends moving into fintech, building new things. And I think, if I'm honest with you, they underestimate how complicated it is. Can you provide some insights about what you think founders in general underestimate in terms of operations or in terms of go-to-market? For me, for example, when I start a business, if I'm honest with you, what's the most difficult part is sales. For me, oh my God, I can run processes, implement everything, do many things, but sales and growing sales is very, very difficult. That is my experience, in general terms. But from your side, in terms of fintech, where do you think that founders underestimate, when they start a new business, or when they are thinking, more than thinking, probably to scale or to when they are already running, but they took the decision already?
Yeah, I would say at the most, let's call it meta level, at the highest level, the mistake most of us make more often than not is to underestimate how much we don't know and understand about the path to success when we start. We all start with a hypothesis. We're going, I see an opportunity, I've got a product or an idea about a product, I have an idea about a market. It's quite likely that you are quite wrong in your starting analysis, and that there's a lot that you don't know and understand. And so I think that the biggest failing in going into doing a new business is that people are not responsive enough, not curious enough, not responsive enough to learn from the market and to keep iterating their proposition, their business, until the business fits and until the business gets its momentum. So I would say that at the highest level, this is the thing. If I had to do things over again, I would put a lot more investment into the learning aspect of the business, the feedback loops from customers, the feedback loops from the market, and so on what we're doing. In terms of specific topics, I think you're an operations guy, or at least you have had deep operations experience. The one thing that I would say we often underestimated is the importance of getting operations to be ready for implementation. We had this way where we would build the technology and sort of think that the operations, we'll fix the operations as we go. And what we found is that, we are obsessed with Net Promoter Score. We are obsessed with having happy customers. You can only have happy customers if you have truly polished operations, and if you have dealt with every unhappy path, anything that can go wrong, and so on, in a slick way. And I would say that that's something that I have sort of consistently underestimated the importance of. I agree with you on sales. I think often we are all tend to be too product orientated and not customer orientated enough. So asking the question, why would somebody buy this? And what is the process of getting somebody to buy this or to engage with this product and to keep engaging with this product? I think that we often under-invest in that part of the business. And then the last thing I will say is people, team. finding the right people, bringing the right people along, building team trust and team cohesion. Ultimately, our chief operating officer, Dieter Botha, he says there are no moats left in business. There's only one superpower left, and that is speed. And speed, to such an extent, is to a large extent, if you think about business as a cybernetic organism consisting of people and machines, the lowest bandwidth part of that entire organism is the connection between people. That's where most things go wrong. That's where most misunderstandings occur. And I think building, not only employing good people, but building a team that has high trust, that has high cohesion, I think is the other one that I would emphasize.
Well, a lot of advices. You cover different aspects. Yeah, well, sales, operations, people, hiring, speed. Wow. I think, all of them, I think bringing all of them together, working in a good base, constant, and also in a growing company is very... to be honest, it's difficult. But if you, as you said before, if you keep focus, you do the one thing that you like and you're good at it, you have this gift for the world, you will do it right. Just keep focus and try to, have a good COO, someone with a business, mindset, I would say, who covers different parts of the internal ecosystem. So you can make sure that that you're running the business properly. One thing that I underestimate, I would say, from the startup, right, is like the customer. Because I have a small business in Chile. We have bicycle shops with my brother. We are now actually mini expanding the business with 2 other cities. And obviously it's B2C, right? You have a good service, they come, they make them happy, you pay very well what you're selling. We have like very high-end bikes, 15,000, 12,000 pounds. So like electric, very high-end bikes for like doing downhill. Road bikes, mountain bike, urban bikes, but the most expensive are road bikes, and also mountain bike. When you are jumping,
yes.
Obviously, we need very good technical people to explain the product, and if you go to a shop to buy a 10K bike, you need to know how is the bike, which is different with the other brands, and that. But from now, like in tech, I am in the startup world for a few years, and I've been building products, and I underestimate how important is the customer feedback and getting into a very good loop with them, to improve the product, right? So that, as you mentioned, that has to be an investment, basically. Have a very good team, and that you collect the feedback, analyze the feedback, implement, and also inform the customer that their feedback, was taken into account, and that change is because of them. So this create this nice, loop, right, between a customer success, I would say, function. That's something that I underestimate, how important it was.
Totally. Mario, and I tell you the challenge we have. So, I love products like bikes, because the thing about it is that in that bike shop, when you're engaging with a customer, you can read their body language. You can see whether they're happy, whether they're not happy. If they come back to have something fixed, you build the customer experience. You build it in your bones. You feel you have a good sense, and you can even get to a point. I know my favorite bike shop in Joburg. Those guys know me. They know what I'll like. They know my priorities. They know the products that would excite me, the gadgets that I find interesting. The problem is, in our current business, we have 22 million customers. How do you develop and I sit in Singapore, and most of my customers are in South Africa and the Philippines. How do I develop that same intuitive understanding and passion for doing something that is right for my customer? And I think one of the things that we've learned is you have to have senior people actually spending quality time with customers to understand, not just to see like clinical numbers, but to actually hear what customers say, to hear what matters to them, hear how they speak about the product. Not just so that you make the right calls, but also so that you keep investing the right emotional energy into the things that matter for your customers. And so I find that when I don't speak to customers, I sort of get depressed after a while. I get disconnected from what I do. But when I spend time with customers, I emotionally connect back. I remind myself, I remember why I've done this in the first place.
Do you still do that?
Do you still
connect sometimes with customers? I know you have many tasks to do, but
I make a point of it. So I make a point, customers as well as frontline staff. So speaking to call center agents and speaking to our brand ambassadors, because those are the people who will tell you what is going on in the real world. Not when they meet you, because then they hear you the CEO, they're like super polite. And then you have to spend a bit of time, you know? You have to say, listen, it's okay. You know, I'm just a normal guy. I'm just lucky. I just got here. I really want to hear. What do you hate about this thing? Like, what drives you crazy about this product? What goes wrong? And I think that kind of connection is a lot more difficult when you have a very large scale business. But it is something that you have to get right.
Jesus Christ, we can be talking for one day about different things. You know why I'm thinking? Because I relate this to this a little bit, because now I'm developing a product for executives, as I mentioned before, and I'm actually talking with every user. We have a small pilot with 50 users, so I'm talking with everyone. Like, you know, like try to meet 10 of them every week for like obviously 30 minutes, 50 minutes, it depends. And last week I didn't meet anyone, and I felt disconnected. I felt, is something wrong? Is everything working properly, or there is a problem, or what happens? And I reconnected this week with them, right? And with a few of them, like 7, I think. And I saw some, this is happening here. We had to improve this. We had to improve that. No, you know, Mario, this is a good idea. You should improve this, because this is, you know, it's going to give me this like view, blah, blah, blah. And I felt like motivated again, like I mean, I'm motivated, but I felt like re-energized and like talking with the team, say, you know, that's happening, sending messages again about this, blah, blah, blah. So basically what you just mentioned to give you, is to remember why you're doing it, I think.
Yes.
As you mentioned. Yeah, and also relate that to production lines. Well, when I was director of operations of manufacturing, a lot of my big success, right? I was very young. Not so young, but I was 27 years old, and I was leading a team of 3,000 people, 3 factories. I was the youngest director in the industry, right? And basically the board and the general manager just bet on me. So like, let's see what he can, you know, help us to improve the operation. And short story, the big success that I had, it was one of the first, probably in years, a director that actually went to the factory and started talking to the workers and saying, first, 3,000 people, trying to learn as many names as I could. So I was saying hello to everyone. Everyone was like, he's here. He's very young. And then, who is your name? Juan. Okay, but then asking them how we improve the process. How we, obviously we did, you know, analysis, we did like with all these numbers and KPIs, where was the bottlenecks, speed, that all these like typical things, like how you improve, you know, business processes. But in the end, in implementation, even if you design it in a very nice way, in your draw, when you go and ask them, hey, what do you think about this? No, boss, this is not gonna work. Why is it not gonna work? Like the numbers, everything say that it's gonna work. It's not gonna work. You know why? Because of this. When I turn around, I do this, and this space is like this, so you have to design it like this. Actually, if you do it like this, it's gonna help me to speed up, and we can remove the bottlenecks, implement a sensor here, which is like moving this for me, so this I can increase my speed by 30%. So actually, you're right, I didn't think about that. And then started, I always been like this, quite human, and like a people person. And that was my big success, because they were involved in the project, and then they were happy, you know, because everything that we were implementing was because of them. And obviously then the bonuses increased because they produced more. So it was like a small side loop as well.
Okay, that's a great story. Actually, Mario, that's a fantastic story. I'm going to borrow this story when I speak to my team, because what I'm trying to currently drive, one of the things I say in the business to people now, when people ask me to make a decision, I say, first figure out who is the best person to make the decision. And the best person to make the decision is the person who has the most context about the factors that should go into that decision. So this idea that the most senior person
No self-protect.
will come up with the best idea. It's a ridiculous idea. Why should the most senior person come up with the best idea? Surely the person who works at that workstation every day, they are thinking all the time, how can this be done better? Surely they are the person who are most likely to come up with the best idea in that context. And so I think that one way in which businesses can do a much better quality job as well as evolve the business faster is to give more empowerment to people who are closer to the problems. And then the job of the manager or the job of the executive is two things, I think. Number one is storytelling, is help people understand why they're doing what they're doing and how it fits into the big thing. And then context, because understanding for that guy at the workstation you're describing, he understands his context, but somebody has to explain to him the up and downstream implications of what he's doing, right? And that is the manager's job. So the manager's job or the executive job is not to tell people what to do, is to help them understand why they're doing it and give them maximum context so that they can make the best decisions. And also, for me, this is not just about building better businesses. It's actually about everyone being more happy at the workplace, because you were saying you're a people person, right? We're all happier when we're more connected. To come back to your week that you didn't speak to your clients, now you speak to your clients, you feel more energized. We're happier, we do better work, we perform better, and we have more sustainable businesses with better quality relationships if we build this like a more deeply connected world. And I say this to my daughters. I have 3 daughters. I say to them, there's no other. There's no other. There's no them. There's only us. And the more we think like that there's no them, there's no those guys on the shop floor who don't know what they're doing, or those guys in sales who don't know what they're doing, or those partners of ours, or those suppliers who are all idiots. There's no them. There's only us. We are all in this together. And the more we think about it that way, I think the more we actually build not only better businesses and societies, but happier businesses and societies. I don't know whether that makes sense to you intuitively.
No, it makes sense.
I'm trying to find the right words to.
Honestly, it makes totally sense. Okay, honestly, that's why I say we can be talking for hours, because I have so many stories about what you're mentioning. How when then they created, for example, like production lines. We have a lot of production lines. It was just one manager. Imagine like in a area, like a function of like 400 people, right? And it was just going from them, more layers, and it was me. So I was going directly to the worker. So I said, how it can, cascade down, and how the information can go up as well to me in a very decent way. So I created production lines. The production lines were there, but I created leaders. So they were talking as well with people. And then like to make a way for the information about, the different production lines go up to me, because that didn't happen before. Probably something very basic. Probably you go to other like manufacturing companies and say, but what? We implemented this 20 years ago. But that didn't happen there. And I had to do it, to do this connection. And the same with suppliers. And no, this guy, no, the transport here, no, the truck, no, the system, the GPS, no, the container didn't arrive. We couldn't export this, blah, blah, blah. Everyone has a problem. And I created this culture and said, no. This is not his problem, it's our problem. How we resolve it, how we make it better, how we integrate. And we did that with suppliers, it was a very good story, actually. Very tough though, a lot of work.
But what you're describing there, I think increasingly is going to be the superpower of our time, which I think some people refer to as systems thinking. It's kind of a deep, intuitive understanding that everything's connected, and that actually, like, you can't say that's not my problem, because it's all connected. The more we can get our people in businesses, and I would include boards and shareholders, all our stakeholders, to have this kind of systems thinking, to understand it's all connection, and actually the quality of the connections are what matters. Because if the quality of the connections are good, people can make quality decisions and they can move fast and they can empower to constantly improve things. And that's in our very nature as human beings. I would say almost in the nature of life is that we're always striving to create things that are more interesting, more complex, more beautiful. But we can only do that through a deep understanding of how our little piece is connected to the rest of it.
Yeah, you should write a book. If you want some quotes from, if you want some quotes from me, I'm happy to help.
To add the quotes.
Coen, we are heading to the end of the episode. I think probably in the future we can do another chapter 2 to talk about other topics. I think we can easily talk about this stuff. But the last question, I generally finish with lesson learned and all this type of thing, but we did a lot of that at the beginning, and we cannot leave without asking you a question about AI, right? Just to finish, how do you see the AI? So how do you see the banking or the fintech industry like in 3 or 5 years more because of AI? Or which is going to be the role of AI here? How do you see it?
Yeah, Mario, I think it is one of the most difficult things to predict because it's moving so fast. And even I would say where we are now, I didn't predict a year ago. Let me tell you the part that I do see. I see AI as becoming a lot more deeply integrated into our day-to-day business routines at all levels in the organization. And I already see AI becoming the primary interface of us as humans with the machine counterparts in the cybernetic organism that is a business. So to give you a sense, I already use my work AI a lot more often than I use the underlying systems that sit on my laptop. And I can see that becoming more and more the way we do things, provided we are very good at creating the semantic layer. That is the layer that gives AI context of our business. And if we do that right, AI is going to move from being an individual productivity tool to actually what I would call a business-wide intelligence tool. I'll give you an example. I already use AI. On a Monday morning, I've got a question that I run, a script I run, where I say, what are the top 5 customer-facing issues that are affecting customer happiness in the last week? And what this AI does for me, it's Claude Cowork. It reaches into every conversation and system in the business, and it basically triages everything that's going on in the business, and it pulls up to me the 5 critical things that are going on across the group. I find that when I start speaking to other leaders in the group, I surprise them with how much I know about those 5 issues. Sometimes they don't know that that's an issue yet. I already know it's an issue. They don't know yet it's an issue. Because, again, to come back to your example of the manufacturing environment, that problem hasn't bubbled up through the layers to them yet. But I've been able to reach in and find it in the engine room of the factory. I've already found that problem. And so you can imagine how much that will change about how we do business. So, I don't spend a lot of time worrying about whether AI will be sentient and whether the robot army will come and take us. What I do know is that as a tool for making business a lot more productive, a lot more powerful, and hopefully qualitatively better for customers, I think that there's something amazing happening right now, and that will have a profound impact in 5 years.
Yes, no, it's so difficult to keep up with everything, isn't it? It's going so fast. But yeah, I agree with you. It's gonna be our main productivity tool across our ecosystem, tech stack ecosystem, for sure. But it is already, basically, So I don't know what's gonna happen next. The only thing that I know, I had to continue trying to be using the new tools, or at least using a few of them, just to, at least Cloud Code, like, or Cloud Work, or Cloud, like using that.
Mario, think about it this way. The AI you're working with today is the worst AI that you'll ever work with. It's just going to get better and better.
Yeah, the Q, I think now, I don't remember very well, but it seems that it's 150, I think. Human, I don't remember now. I read this a while ago, but I think the human is, just to say something, I'm inventing, 120. And this is, we are around 150 or probably more now. But it's going to be 1,000 very soon. So like...
Yes.
So
no,
like,
and this is the thing. The part that excites me is how this makes smart humans even smarter. So if you have a very smart engineer with 140 IQ, he uses this, he has a 200 IQ. So you're making your best human superhuman. And that for me is a crazy idea.
Yeah, we are becoming very efficient, very, very efficient. I don't know if you heard about Intercom. With this we close because I'm taking more time of your time. Intercom is a very well-known company. It's like around 300 million revenue. It's a customer service company. A lot of AI. They also now have Fin. Short story, they ask every single person in their business to use cloud. So everyone is using cloud. Everyone. So like, yeah, we're moving there basically.
Yeah, we're all going to be there.
Thank you so much, Coen. Thank you for your conversation. It went very fast. I wanted to continue the conversation, if I'm honest with you. And it was a pleasure to hear your story, like the technical aspect, the technology aspect, also like the human aspect, the culture aspect, how you build your business, your organization, how you delegate, how much time you spend with customers, right? Understanding how you can make them happier. Because in the end, all of that is linked to your philosophy, how you started the business, how you want to remove these barriers, to make the bank or the financial services, digital financial services, accessible to everyone. Starting in South Africa and emerging markets, now moving to everywhere actually, because you've been in the Philippines, Singapore, you're going to Hong Kong, so it's in everywhere. And not just because it's emerging markets, it's because, we have low income people, no well-educated people in everywhere, in every single country, right? So it's not just an emerging market, and I understand that point too. Thank you so much. Would you like to have a few words to say goodbye before we end?
No, thank you very much. It was a great, wide-ranging conversation, and it does feel like we're just scratching the surface. So I hope this will not be the last time we talk.
Thank you so much, Coen. I will, let's keep in touch, and good luck with everything. And I don't have to tell you enjoy the weather, because in Singapore always the weather is good. It's not like London.
Exactly. It's always summer.
It's always summer. Great. Enjoy your weekend. Thank you so much. Speak to you soon.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Cheers. Bye.